Hello everyone. That summer, we had made an ordinary camping plan. Just a simple getaway with friends, to escape into nature and clear our minds. But we had no idea what we were walking into. This wasn't just a camping trip. This was the place where something long forgotten noticed us. If you have the courage to hear what I'm about to tell you, put on your headphones as the darkness falls. Because this is not a story you'll want to leave unfinished. If you love untold, true horror stories, you're in the right place. Because I lived this story. And if you're hearing this voice, it might happen to you too. If you love spine-chilling, unforgettable horror stories, you're in the right place. I want to reach 500 subscribers. Would you consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and making sure not to listen alone? Because tonight, attention, I share horror stories every day at 1500 hours p.m. It was the summer we had just graduated from college. Tired of the ordinary, we wanted to spend a few days in nature. The idea came up spontaneously. Me, Alex, and two of my friends, Jake and Lily. Between planning the route, packing tents and supplies, we eventually found ourselves in a remote forest up north. The place was marked as a dead zone on some maps. For some reason, that made it even more exciting for us. But I wish we had never taken that first step. The lake where we set up camp was surrounded by trees covered in moss. It didn't have a name. Maybe it had just been forgotten over time. The water was almost perfectly still. No breeze. No birds. Not even a single mosquito. When night fell, we lit a fire. Jake played the guitar, and Lily told stories. I walked toward the lake, and in that moment, I saw a reflection in the water. But it wasn't mine. I turned around. No one was there. The next morning, we found a strange symbol by the lake. A triangle made of stones, with an old piece of wood placed in the center. Carved into the wood was a symbol, an upside-down human figure. Lily looked uneasy. Could someone be living out here? She asked. But there were no signs of anyone. It was as if this place hadn't been touched in years. That night, I woke up. The zipper of my tent slowly slid open, but not from the outside, from the inside. It felt like someone was in there with me. I turned on my flashlight and looked around. No one. But the floor of my tent was covered in mud, and I hadn't brought any mud in with me. By morning, Jake was gone. His tent was untouched. No footprints. But by the edge of the lake, his shirt was half submerged in the water. Small ripples were forming on the surface, as if something or someone was still in there. Lily panicked. We have to leave. Now, she said. But the car wouldn't start, and our phones still had no signal. That night, I heard water sounds near my tent. It was slow, deliberate, like someone gently stirring the lake. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside. Lily was gone. I looked toward the lake and saw someone walking across the water. Their face completely dark. They raised a hand and pointed at me. Then they were pulled beneath the surface. I ran, searching for Lily. I found her outside the campsite, walking barefoot. Her eyes were closed. She was whispering. I went inside, but the door didn't close. It's still open. By morning, the campsite had completely changed. The trail we came in on was gone. The sky was gray. Time felt like it had stopped. I found a note, written in my own handwriting. If you've heard me, it's already too late. But I hadn't written it. Since that day, Lily never spoke again. Jake was never found. I still think about that night we spent there. And every time I fall asleep, I see those faceless silhouettes. There's still something in the lake. And it's watching me. If this story affected you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes, being alone doesn't mean being lonely. Have you ever thought about what it would really be like to spend the night in a remote forest, where the only thing that's certain is fear itself? What if the price for survival wasn't just a matter of strength, but of something deeper, something you couldn't escape from? Tonight's story is one that haunts me still. It's about a camping trip that started out like any other, but ended in a way none of us could have imagined. But here's a chilling fact before we dive in. Did you know that, on average, one person goes missing every year in the exact same forest where this took place? Do you think it's just bad luck, or is something else at work here? Let's get into the story. But before that, ask yourself, would you dare to spend the night in a forest where people vanish without a trace? It was last summer, when I, Eileen, Kemal, and Emre, 4 close friends, decided to take a break from everything and go on a camping trip. We were looking for peace, nature, and a bit of adventure. Little did we know that this trip would turn into something much more than we bargained for. We picked a spot on the map that had no name. It was deep in a remote forest, near an old, abandoned lake. The idea seemed perfect, off the beaten path, far from civilization. I thought, this is going to be an adventure we'll never forget. The trees were thick, their branches tangled above us, blocking out the sunlight. The leaves almost seemed to whisper, hiding secrets we weren't ready to learn. The first day was idyllic. Fresh air, the chirping of birds, and the peaceful hum of nature. We set up camp by the lake, and everything felt perfect. But something was off. The water in the lake was too still, dead calm. The heat in the air didn't seem to match the chilling silence around us. Emre said, "This isn't normal. There's no breeze, no rustling in the leaves, nothing." It was as if time itself had stopped. That night, we gathered around the campfire, telling stories, laughing, and enjoying the stillness of the night. But then, we heard it. A sound, soft, distant, but unmistakably human. We all froze. "Did you hear that?" I asked. We all listened carefully. But it was gone. The forest was silent once more. We tried to shrug it off, returning to our tents for the night. But when I woke up, something wasn't right. Kemal was gone. His tent was zipped up, but he wasn't inside. His belongings were untouched. The fire had burned out completely. Eileen and Emre were panicking. Where could he have gone? But there were no signs, no footprints, nothing. We searched all day. We couldn't find him. And the eeriest part? No one heard anything. No sound of movement, no cries, no rustling leaves. It was as if Kemal had just vanished into thin air. That night, the forest seemed to close in on us. The silence was suffocating. Eileen refused to sleep, convinced something was wrong. She kept whispering, "We're being watched. There's something out there, watching us." We stayed close, keeping an eye on each other, but we never saw anything. The next morning, we found something in Kemal's tent. A note. The paper was old and brittle, the ink faded and smudged. The message was chilling. No one leaves the forest. If you try, you'll be lost like the others. We tried to make sense of it, but we couldn't. It didn't make sense. That wasn't Kemal's handwriting. Who had written it? And where was Kemal? The more we thought about it, the worse it felt. Something was wrong, something we couldn't explain. Days passed. Each night, we heard more sounds, low, distorted sounds that didn't belong to any animal or human. They seemed to be following us, getting closer. But no matter where we went, no matter how far we walked, we couldn't escape them. And there was always the lake, still and watching. One night, we saw them. For silhouettes standing in the water, perfectly still, like they were waiting. But their faces were gone. No features, just shadows. We tried to run, but the forest was changing. Every path we took, every direction we turned, the trees grew thicker, the darkness deeper. We couldn't escape. By the time the sun rose, we had no idea where we were. We had been walking in circles, and the forest had swallowed us whole. We finally made it back to the town, but when we got there, something was wrong. No one helped us. No one even seemed to recognize us. We were outsiders, as if we never belonged. But the worst part, we were never really gone. That town, that forest, they have a way of keeping you. And I know, we weren't the first ones to disappear there, and we won't be the last. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And next time you find yourself out in the wilderness, ask yourself, are you really alone? Or is something else out there, waiting? Have you ever thought about this? Fear can sometimes be as close as a sound. What lies behind the sound that disappears at the edge of a lake, deep in a forest? Sometimes, it's not just people who vanish, but time itself disappears. Or what about never being able to find the place where someone vanished? Come with me and let's explore this story together. But first let me ask you, have you ever stepped into the depths of a forest and felt like you were lost? A few months ago, my friends and I decided to go on a simple camping trip. The strange part was, we all needed to get away from the stress of work or school. We set out, deciding to go deep into an abandoned forest by the riverbank. It was such an isolated place that even finding it on maps was a challenge. When we set up camp, everything seemed normal. The sky was clear, the trees were lush, and the surroundings were quiet. We could only hear the chirping of the birds. It was so beautiful, it felt like the world had been made just for us. But something was missing. In the silence, perhaps something we couldn't understand was watching us. As night fell, we lit a fire and retreated to our tents. Later into the night, there wasn't even the sound of wind. Soon, we would realize that something made this night different from all the others. That silence was just a reflection of everything else. We spent the night in the tent. When I woke up, there was an unsettling feeling inside me. Someone or something was there. A sensation, a fear. But what was it? There was movement in my tent, or maybe it was just a shadow. I immediately woke up and looked around, but I couldn't see anyone. I opened the zipper of the tent, and there was no one outside. No tracks, no sounds. But something was there. The sky had darkened a lot, but something was missing. It was clear that I shouldn't be left alone outside to spend the night. Yes, I didn't know exactly what was happening, but something inside me told me there was danger. The next night, we sat by the fire near the lake. We thought everything was normal, but we heard sounds. Slowly, faintly, like a scream. But no one else heard it. Only I heard it. Over and over again, a scream. I quickly started moving, stepping into the depths of the forest to find the source of the sound. At that moment, the most terrifying thing happened. A light reflected from the lake, shining from a very far distance and very faintly. Slowly, something started to rise from the water. But before I could fully understand what it was, it disappeared in an instant. When my friends woke up, they hadn't heard the sounds at all. But me. I will never forget that night and that light. In the morning, we noticed something. Everything had changed. Finding the path was almost impossible. Everything was different, as if time and space had taken on a life of their own. A path that had appeared from the forest vanished right before our eyes. We found another note, and this time, there was a change in the words. It's not just the lost things, but time itself that gets lost here. At that moment, we thought it was over. But there was one thing left. Every moment, it felt like an eye was watching us. Finally, when we returned to the town, it was as if everything had been forgotten. But deep inside, I know I will never forget that night. If this story affected you, and if you want to hear more spine-chilling tales, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes, in the darkest moments, a light must shine, but you never know which light will draw you in. Have you ever thought that a camping experience could turn into a terrifying nightmare? When night falls, and every sound from the depths of the forest turns into the sound of something, or someone, lost? What if one morning, as you try to find your way back, you realize everything around you has disappeared, and you start to believe that time itself has stopped? Today, I'm going to tell you a story about just such an experience. Do you think some places might actually be lost? Come, let's explore this dark tale together. But first, let me ask you a question. If you ever felt lost in a forest, what would you do? If you've subscribed to the channel, let's begin. After a difficult year, my friends and I were looking for some peace. But how could we have known we'd find it? We set out, venturing into a deserted forest area that was difficult to even locate on maps. But as soon as we stepped foot there, everything changed. At first, everything seemed normal. We set up our tents, lit a fire, and chatted while gazing at the sky. But as night began to fall, I sensed something was wrong. There was an odd hum coming from the depths of the forest. The cries of the birds, the wind's whisper, felt different than usual. We spent the night in our tents. When I woke up, it felt like something was there. A weight, a fear within me. But what was it? I opened my tent, looked around, but saw nothing. Still, something was there. The sky had darkened, but there was still something missing. I felt like something, a presence, was watching us. The next morning, as we were preparing to leave the camp, we found something strange by the lake. A stone formation, triangular in shape. Inside, there was an old note. The note, written in shaky handwriting, read, "Before you leave, the traces of those lost here remain. If you turn back, you will be forgotten." Everyone was silent. Fear had settled deep within us. What we felt in that moment was indescribable. But something had changed. We decided to stay one more night. In a daze, we ventured deeper into the forest. Suddenly, I saw a light. Far away, near the lake, a light flickered. The moment I took a step, the light vanished. But something was there. Something had eyes, watching us. I was alone in the tent again. Later that night, I looked up and saw a silhouette. A figure watching me. It was heading toward the lake. I pulled back, rushed to wake my friends, but no one saw the silhouette. My eyes stared blankly for a while. I would never forget that night, and those eyes. The next morning, everything had changed. The path was impossible to find. The camp was gone. That old trail had disappeared in an instant. We found another note. Every lost thing vanishes with the loss of time. We knew it was time to leave. But I still felt those eyes. The eyes watching us. Every moment, all around us. If this story has affected you, and you want to explore more terrifying moments, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And remember, some places don't just disappear physically. Time disappears too. And once it does, you'll never know if you'll return.